of the day in the communications track. And thank you for tuning in. We want to give a big thank you to all of our sponsors of the IAC conference. This session is being sponsored by our Champions of Native Agricultures, as well as Barn to Door. Today, we have Taylor Gazda presenting about adapting in a new reality. Taylor grew up on a registered Angus operations in Athens, Georgia, where she was heavily involved in her family's operation. And that's where her passion for marketing was seeded at a very young age. Her love for purebred cattle, the industry brought her back to her roots when she started Gazda, the brand, in 2018, where she provides full service marketing for agricultural businesses. So Taylor, please enlighten us today.
Thank you for that introduction. And like I was speaking before we went live, this is actually my first time having to even be on a Zoom conference since the pandemic started. I know that is very rare considering that the majority of businesses, large or small, had to become virtual very quickly because of this pandemic, but I already worked from home, and so not a whole lot changed on my front. Other than the fact when this pandemic hit, it was kind of a sink or swim for me. I knew that there was going to be cuts from businesses, and they were going to have to figure out what resources were vital to them making it through this economic withhold. And to be honest, I didn't know if that would apply to me. And so thankfully and luckily, a lot of the producers within the cattle industry, which is the industry that I work in heavily, they realized that if they weren't digitally marketing their operations or their businesses, that they needed to do so, and they needed to do so immediately. And so as far as my business and helping other producers market their operations, it really took off. So I was very fortunate from that standpoint. And I'm going to go ahead and pause and give y'all just a heads up. I have a dog in my office. Her name is Timber, and she likes to bark at just about every leaf that rolls by. So if y'all hear a little growl in the background, that is my dog. But going more into marketing your business digitally, and more specifically on social media, I'm going to focus heavily on Facebook versus some of the other platforms today. I'll loop in Instagram a little bit, just from the standpoint of Instagram is owned by the same company, by Facebook. So in 2004, when Facebook was created, it was done so for a networking purpose. Specifically college students, and even more specifically, it was only open or available to Ivy League schools originally. And then shortly after, they opened it up to all universities. And then in 2007, it was opened up to anybody who had an email, or later on, it was opened up to anybody who had an email. And then in 2007, they offered the opportunity for businesses to market their products on Facebook. So there was the option to go from this personal profile to where it's just you, it's one person, to this business, who it could be multiple people or it could be one person. And so as businesses saw the opportunity to market their products and their services, they jumped on it. Here was another outlet, virtually free, to market what they had to offer globally, not just from state to state, but worldwide. And up until that point, really the only option they had to do that with was with a website with certain domains and certain platforms that came with a price. And so here you had the option to do what you were doing on your website, but to do so on a more day-to-day basis. So Facebook gradually started to see more and more businesses market their product. And it's really ironic because behind Facebook is this algorithm. And I always tell my parents and my friends that I went into communications and I went into marketing primarily because there was no or little to none math or science. My brain is just not wired that way. I'm far more creative than I am textbook. And so as I started to dive more into social media marketing, I realized that I could not get out that easily and that there is some math and some science to social media, and that is the Facebook algorithm. And I will be honest, even for somebody like me who is paid to do the marketing digitally for several operations, this is something that I have to keep learning day to day because it changes that much. Facebook has an algorithm that essentially delegates what content is provided and what content is put in front of what specific users. And so from a marketer's standpoint, sometimes there is only so much you can do and the rest is up to the algorithm. So Facebook has this algorithm that delegates what gets put in front of what audience. And unfortunately, and ironically, at the end of 2019, towards the end of 2019, Facebook changed that. They wanted to go back to their roots and they wanted to really go back to why Facebook was created, which, like I mentioned before, was to provide a network for individuals. And here in 2019, 2020, 2018, leading up to where we are now, Facebook had become this platform for businesses to market their product. So Facebook really wanted to scale back and go more to the roots of personal networking, one person interacting with another. And so they changed their algorithm to where it wouldn't completely bury all the content that businesses were putting out, but it would do so from the standpoint of if you weren't targeting the specific audience needed to see that content, then it was probably not being delivered to who you wanted it to. And so once 2020 hit and this pandemic hit, Facebook kind of had to reconsider the way that they did the algorithm, because here we are, not being able to go to a store. We can sit at home and watch TV. We can hear things on the radio, but even things as small scale as print advertisement, the mailing system was delayed. Things weren't getting to people as soon as they needed to. And so Facebook kind of had to reevaluate how they were delivering that content. And so that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today. I don't know for certain, based off of the participants that are in this session, how many of y'all already have a Facebook page for your business, or if you're marketing on social media at all. And if you are, feel free to go ahead and type into the little chat what that business is, and if you are or aren't on social media. And if you are on social media but you're not on Facebook, go ahead and feel free to put in whatever platform you are active on, and I can kind of touch on that if we need to towards the end. But here going forward, I'm going to kind of go through and talk about some different marketing techniques and different ways that you can really establish your brand on social media, especially during this pandemic. There's so many different things that go into marketing one's brand. And I will be the first to say, it's always the hardest to develop a brand for yourself. Speaking from experience, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to go into marketing, and I wanted to dedicate my life to helping other producers within the agricultural industry market their products. That stems from watching my dad in his career. He is a regional manager for the American Angus Association, and from a very young age, I saw that he put his heart and soul into the operations of other breeders versus his own. Because at home we had our own cow herd, but it was always the breeders within his territory who came before his own. I have friends all the time that ask, well, why didn't y'all ever have a production sale, or why didn't y'all ever have an online sale? And I have to say, because our cattle weren't the priority. It was always the breeders within my dad's territory who were at the top of the tier. And I found that he saw so much joy in helping other people have success that I decided to dedicate my career in doing the same. And so one of the things that I really pride myself in and pride my business in is the fact that it's one person, and it's one person who's going to promote your business as if it's my own. And that being said, kind of looping back to what I was talking about before, in developing my own brand, it's really hard to solidify what you want to be known under. And it's one thing from saying, it's easy to say, I know how I want to be perceived, but it's hard to nail down whether it's that logo or the fonts even that you want to relate your brand to. And that's something I think a lot of people don't ever think about, is how something as small as a font choice can reflect on your business. And so in 20, I guess it was 2020 really, I finally, after years of having my business and helping other producers, nailed down my own branding. And I will kind of go into further detail about some of that stuff here in a little bit. But what I want to talk to you all about now is the different ways that you can market yourself on social media. And the biggest piece of advice that I could give to you going forward is to have a Facebook business page. Statistics say about 40% of the world's population are on social media, which is huge. That being said, it is still vital that you take into consideration that other 60% who aren't on social media and who can't access your Facebook business page unless they have a personal Facebook account of their own. So websites, other ways for people to access information about your business are still very important. But today we're going to focus primarily on Facebook. That being said, I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully, like I said earlier, I have not had to really do Zoom very much, so hopefully I don't mess anything up. Okay, it says the host
Yep. I think I need to make you a co-host, which I forgot to do. Sorry about that. Gotta forgive me for stubbing my toe here.
You are fine. Okay.
Can you share now?
I think this, yep, I think
Okay,
I
great.
got it where it works.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So ironically, you would think that when creating a business Facebook page, your initial thought would be to make your icon or your profile picture a copy of your logo. The first thing you want people to see when they see your content on their timeline is your brand, your logo, the visual that they are going to tie to your operation or your business. And it's funny because there are very well established operations within the United States, whether it be businesses that are involved in agriculture or cattle operations who have a profile icon that is not their logo. And it blows my mind that people don't even think to consider putting their logo, because that's the first thing people are going to see when they see your content on social media. And so what I always tell people is the first thing to do when creating a business page for your business is to use whatever logo you have as that profile thumbnail. And the example I always go back to is tied more to the show cattle business, which I know not everybody is going to be involved in. But what I say is, yes, it is great if your operation has won the National Western Stock Show or won junior nationals or won state fair. But there's a lot of other people in the world, to a certain extent, who have also accomplished that in a different year. And showing up on one's timeline, people might not know that it was so-and-so operation that won that year when they see that backdrop picture as the icon. So I always highly encourage people to use their logo as their profile icon. Same goes for their cover photo, whether it is branded somehow with their logo, or if it is strict content of a building or any sort of establishment that is recognizable to your brand, whether that be a barn on your property that people know, hey, I know that was taken at Taylor's, or hey, I know that was taken at so-and-so ranch, which in building a presence on social media might be hard at first. So I'm going to go through several different examples of businesses that do a really good job, and then a couple businesses that are very fortunate to already have a very well established name within the industry who don't really have to try as hard on social media. So the first business I'm going to talk about are two actually different retail beef companies that are both located in Texas. And I'm just going to show y'all a little bit of the differences that the two do in terms of their digital marketing. And I'm going to bring up their Instagram accounts as well, just from what I mentioned earlier, that Facebook owns Instagram. So the first one I'm going to talk about is 44 Farms. And they do a tremendous job of marketing their operation. That being said, they offer a retail beef program that is now in partnership with Walmart, but through their 44 Farms Facebook page and Instagram account, they market their purebred cattle herd and their retail beef operation under one umbrella. And so one thing that 44 does very, very well is they have established their brand throughout all of their marketing outlets, whether that be through print advertisement or through social media marketing. When you see a photo or you see a graphic or you even see a print ad, you could remove the 44 Farms logo from that piece and you would still be able to tell who was putting out that content. because they've branded themselves so well. Here you'll see how they kind of post daily almost, to interact with their offering or with their audience. And that's something that I always stress to people so much, in terms of people who are on the fence about if they get a Facebook business page or if they get a website, from those who are not ready to tackle both at the same time. Facebook and social media accounts are more of a day-to-day update on what's going on in the business or the operation, whereas a website is strictly, more of the foundation content, the things that are not going to change as much. So you'll update your website if you're, for instance, if you're a cattle producers who is having a production sale, you'll update your website with information regarding that. But other than that, your website is where your foundation information lives, whereas your social media outlets are used more for the day-to-day. So here you'll see that they've utilized their Facebook to market their product. Whereas down here, you see more of the cattle side. And here again, product. So you kind of differ a little bit, on what you're seeing, whether you're a consumer who has absolutely no tie to the cattle industry and you see 44 Farms branded on some of the products in the meat case at Walmart and you're curious and you follow 44 Farms on Facebook, likely you're going to have some content pop up that's not going to be relatable to you. Every once in a while, when they're having a production sale, they will, here, let's go up here to the photos, they will highlight some of those featured lots. And a consumer who has absolutely no ties to agriculture isn't going to have hardly any interaction with those kind of posts. Here, let's see if Facebook starts. For instance, right here. Here they're marketing one of their online sales, whereas a consumer not tied to agriculture will have little to no involvement in this post. As you can see right here, it has 5 likes, whereas something that's more generic and more applicable to a wider audience is going to have quite a bit more likes, as you can see here. So another business who is very similar to 44 Farms would be 111 Beef Republic, and they are a photography client of mine, in a very new retail beef company. 111 also has a cattle operation, but they do not market that cattle operation under the same umbrella the same way that 44 does. So they have a Facebook page for their retail beef company and then a separate Facebook page for their cattle. And here you'll see, one of the biggest differences is the number and the following. 44 is far more established, and like I mentioned before, has kind of 2 different sectors under one umbrella, whereas 111 Beef Republic is strictly just the retail beef side, and they're very, very new. I think they launched their Facebook page just last week, so the following hasn't quite developed yet. But even in the fact that these are 2 businesses marketing very similar products, they do so in a very different way. 44 prides themselves in the fact that they are ranchers. And while 111 also prides themselves in the fact that they raise the beef that they sell, they're just from 2 very different backgrounds. And so the style of photography is very different. And that's something that I'm going to go further into detail here in just a little bit, how I, as a marketer, will alter the style from client to client ever so slightly, while I, as a photographer, very much want my content to be branded from the standpoint of whoever I'm doing work for. I'd like for consumers and potential customers looking at that content to know that it was me who did it. Each business needs to vary a little bit as well. So every business doesn't need to have the exact same style. So here you'll see that 111 has utilized their Facebook page and dove right in with a variety of different content. And so something that the Facebook algorithm loves to throw at people is they want you to have a variety. What that means is they don't want you to just post photos. They don't want you to just post text content. They don't want you to just post videos. They don't want you to just post links. They want you to post a little bit of everything. So here you'll see a graphic that 111 has posted. You'll go a little further up and you'll see that 111 has posted a link. And I think they're so new that they probably haven't posted a video yet, but incorporating video within your social media strategy will benefit you in terms of delivering your content in front of people on their newsfeed. Something else that I like to stress when I am talking to new clients who are interested in marketing their business on social media is you have to have a very good balance between real and raw and professionally done. There's a statistic that says that, 90% of the posts that are put on social media are interacted with if they have some sort of visual aid. Whether that be a professionally taken picture, a cell phone picture, professionally done video, cell phone video, what have you. It's far less likely for someone to interact, like, share, comment, whatever, on your social media posts if it is strictly text. So what I tell people is, the first thing to consider is combining visually appealing photos versus ones that are real and authentic and easier to relate to. So obviously your eye is going to be caught when you see a professionally taken photo versus when you see a cell phone video. And while I absolutely love the way that 44 brands themselves, rarely will you ever see a real cell phone photo or video of any place on the ranch, whether it be of the cattle or of the product. Everything is very much professionally done. And oftentimes that makes it really hard for potential customers to relate to. While in the cattle business, we've all, seen a bull out in a pasture or seen cows going onto grass. This might not be how we visualize it. An operation that does a really, really good job of bringing the real and raw to social media is Griswold Cattle Company. And here is an example of someone who doesn't have their brand listed as their profile photo, but does so within their cover photo. Just about everything you will see on here will be real and raw. As you can see here, this is a cell phone video. And this is a really good operation who ties their Instagram directly to their Facebook. So everything that they post on one platform automatically posts to another. And there are some restrictions within that I can go further into detail on if need be, but you can see as scrolling through here that the majority of their Facebook content is sized in a square, which is the same. And you can see right here, this is super further into detail, but the differences in utilizing hashtags on Instagram and Twitter versus on Facebook. But you can tell that their content is definitely intertwined and connected. Rarely will you see a photo that's professionally taken like this. Everything else is real and raw. They utilize a lot of video content, and they do so on both platforms. Over here on Instagram, you'll see a lot of the similar content that we saw on their Facebook page. And then up here, Instagram allows you to kind of prioritize any stories that you put up. And Facebook, this is kind of the tunnel that you could go on and talk about forever. And I know I only have about 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm not going to go super into depth because I could talk about this for an entire week. But Facebook and Instagram both allow you to put up stories, but on Instagram, they allow you to save those stories during or in different categories. So Griswold is a multi-breed operation in Stillwater, Oklahoma, that has a heavy emphasis on the bulls that they use and the bulls that they raise. They have a small bull stud, and so going through their Instagram stories, you'll see how they've broken their highlights up into different some of the different bulls that they highlight in their operation. And I'm going to go through now and talk to you more specifically about how I help my clients brand their own operations. I have several different clients that I work with, whether they are project to project basis or full on retainer, where I might have a hands on in every aspect of their marketing, whether it be print, digital, what have you. The American Angus Association is one of the clients that I work with pretty hands-on their photography side. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about on the professional photography side, like I mentioned before, utilizing professional photography and marketing your business. This is what I really urge producers to do, whether you do it quarter or just annually. Sorry, my dog is rolling around sneezing, if y'all can't hear that. But I always urge producers, whether they do it annually or quarterly, to have a professional photographer come in, take pictures at their operations, spend a day there, kind of get some of the ins and outs, so that when you're marketing your business, you have those professional photos to kind of add credibility. The American Angus Association brought me in to photograph two very different operations. One was a feedlot in Kansas, and the other one was a commercial cow herd who utilizes Angus bulls within their operation in north central Oklahoma. So while these two different programs were relatively close to each other, they were marketing two very different products. But the American Angus Association as one entity was going to be the person who were putting out these photos. And so I wanted that content to match as closely as possible. So in doing so, whether you bring in a professional photographer or you have a camera of your own, and you're not just snapping something on your cell phone, it's a good idea to kind of get a variation of, and I'm not always the best at this, a vertical shot and a horizontal shot. So as I go through these, you'll kind of see how I've utilized the same photography style throughout all the operations that I'm going to show you, but done so a little differently so that each one kind of is unique in its own. I don't know how many of y'all have ever been to a feedlot, but it's very hard to make a feedlot look visually appealing. So here you'll see kind of a difference, and it's very much the same shot, but the composition is just a little bit different. Same here. The same concept, but just a little different in how it's composed. And same here, both headshots, but brought to you at a little bit different angle. And then here you're moving into kind of a production side more so than the finishing side. And you have to remember to kind of get a variety, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And you'll see right here, same two, cow and calf, same pair, but a little bit different look and feel. Same here with the bull and the cows, but a little bit different look and feel. So next, I'm going to show y'all a company who is very similar to the American Angus Association in terms of how they brought me on to take pictures for their social media at 2 different locations. But this will be a feed technology company who brought me on to take pictures in Idaho and then pictures in Texas. So Idaho in September and Texas in November are 2 very different places, but at the same time, when going to their website or going to their social media outlets, we want people to be able to tell that whether it's in one state or another, one country or another, that it's the same brand marketing the same content. So here we are in Idaho, and this picture right here will kind of tie back into a picture that I'm going to show here in Texas in a little bit. And then here we are in Texas. So very much the same style, but a little bit warmer feel. And this is the picture I was referencing. So when somebody sees this on social media, and maybe even has seen this one on social media, at this point, they should know that this shot is very much tied to the Grow Safe system, and kind of develop some brand recognition through the types of shots that they get. Moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit more about specific cattle operations, and I hate that I can't be there in person and I can't ask people what their backgrounds are and what their businesses are, so that I can direct some of the content more specifically to them. But the majority of my clients are within the purebred cattle business, and so the majority of what I have to share with y'all is content that I have created for those clients. And so, whereas these are all pictures of Angus cattle, they differ a lot from the pictures that I took for the American Angus Association in terms of the look and feel. Deer Valley, I've tried really hard to develop a style that is colorful but not overwhelming in terms of contrast at the same time. And here are just some examples of the 111 Beef Republic pictures that I've taken that really differentiate themselves from maybe, let's see if I can do this without accidentally exiting out, differ from how 44 Farms markets their program. So moving on to how I market my business, there is something to be said about consistently putting up a graphic, whether it's a graphic or a photo style, or even the voice within the text of your social media content that really brand your business. For me, after many, many, many years of trying to develop an actual logo and brand for my business, I landed on this bull. And so my objective when finally creating this bull was that eventually, after establishing myself as a business, that people could see this bull and know that it was tied to Gazda, the brand. And I've utilized these graphics in a sense to not only market myself, but highlight my clients as well. So this would be more directed towards the people who might be listening to this who are interested in creating a marketing business of their own, versus somebody who is trying to market their own business. But in still many ways, this ties to you as well. So don't completely tune out right here, because this can apply to you as well. So here you'll see a handful of graphics that utilize the same bull, the same concept. But within those are very different things. So we'll start at the beginning. And while this isn't my actual logo is this, but it's just a solid bull and solid text. Over time, people have seen this picture enough. Those that are close to me know that I've taken it. So it's something that on my business card I have within my logo, but I've utilized the brand itself, input content that I've created within that. So picture I took within the brand that represents myself. Same as if I'm doing a giveaway or trying to get people to interact with me on my business page, whether that be on Facebook or on Instagram. I did a giveaway back this fall, and so I put as a reminder that the giveaway was ending a picture of what we were giving away, and just a little bit of a blurb about the fact that the giveaway was ending. And then holidays. I try to post for every holiday. I am really bad about making sure that I post for my other clients, that I don't always do the best job about posting for myself. But I just try to adapt to the holiday and kind of the vibe that holiday gives off. So for Thanksgiving, it's in the fall, it's more fall colors. So I wanted to take a photo that I took during the fall who might incorporate some of those colors. And I landed on this cow-calf pair, and just put thankful, happy Thanksgiving. And that was my way of acknowledging the holiday and trying to get some of my followers to interact. Christmas, since I live in Oklahoma, we don't have just a ton of snow. And since I'm from Georgia, I don't have a ton of photos that I've taken in the snow, nor do I do very well in cold weather. And so very rarely will you see on my business page or really any of my clients' businesses page kind of some silly, more relaxed content like this. But since I didn't have a photo that really spoke to the wintertime or to Christmas, I decided to utilize the brand that I created and directly intertwine the season with that. So I kind of turned my bull into Rudolph. And then here is something that I came up with once I developed my brand that really does a good job of marketing my client, which is my number one goal, but also tying it back to my business as well. So about once a month, I'll go through and I'll feature a client of mine just to give their brand a little bit more recognition. And in doing so, the way that I've designed it also kind of promotes my brand as well. So what I'll do is I will utilize a photo that I've taken at their operation or at their business. I will list their business name, and I'll list where their business is located. And so going through, you can see the different businesses. You'll see that they're very similar in style, but different at the same time. So a lot of these will be purebred Angus operations, but they're in different parts of the country. So that being said, I will turn this back over to Carrie. I don't know if there's anybody logged on who is asking questions.
Yes, we had a few questions come in.
Perfect.
The first one would be, what kind of time and cost goes into putting into an impactful social media presence?
That's a great question. And I will begin my answer by stating, when I dove into social media as a job, I never thought in a million years that somebody would pay somebody else to do their social media. I naturally thought that from the standpoint of my generation kind of evolved with social media. It was something that was created during a time that I was getting into stuff like this. And so as social media grew, I kind of grew with it. Whereas my parents, their generation and generations before that have little to no experience with social media or have no desire to learn. So that was the first time that I was like, yes, people need somebody to help them with this stuff. The second, and probably the most vital thing, on the cattle end especially, and I think this speaks for several different businesses within the agricultural industry. For the cattle side, timber's growling at a leaf, I'm sorry. For the cattle side, the producers that I work with are so busy creating the product. They are feeding the cows, they are calving the cows, they are raising the bulls, they're getting ready for the production sales, they're getting ready for the online sales. And the last thing they want to do when they come home at night is post on social media. And that's completely understanding. And so that's why they bring somebody like me to come in and kind of help them strategize and then execute a plan. In terms of cost, it really depends on how in-depth you want to be. When a producer or a business owner comes to me asking questions about if I could come on board and help them with their digital marketing, what I usually do is I will essentially audit the social media business pages that they might already have developed, or visit with them closely about kind of the presence they want to create if they don't have one developed. And from there, video, photography, content itself, but quality content has to be brainstormed and developed, and that is time consuming. So it really varies and depends on what you already have developed, the foundation that you've already built, and really where you want to take your business. Here's two very good examples. Both of these operations, and can y'all still see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Two cattle operations, but who market their operations in two very different ways. So as I mentioned before, 44, you will hardly ever, if ever, see a cell phone picture or video put on their social media platform. And they have the upwards of 30,000 followers. So they are paying somebody to either work for them full time or come in and take these professionally done photos for them to utilize on their Facebook. Whereas Griswold, they have close to, not quite as many. They have 22,000 followers, and the majority of their content is straight up cell phone. Rarely will you see a professionally done photo. So you don't have to have somebody come in and take photos for you or create a promotional video. That content can be created by you, and it can be on cell phones because, you know, in today's age, a cell phone camera is just as good as some of the cameras that professional photographers are utilizing. But to answer your question, the strong majority of the time is going to be consumed in creating a strategy and executing that content. Every single client of mine is a case-by-case basis, so I can't give you a specific number or dollar amount on cost, and I can't give you an hour or minute on time because they all vary. But if you have specific questions about your specific business or operation, I'm sure if you don't already have access to this, Carrie will be able to share my contact information, and feel free to contact me specifically about if you have questions with your specific business.
That's great. Thank you. And it's really nice to see the side-by-side comparison to the different types of, you know, how people are doing things differently. There's not just a one-way street for that.
Absolutely. It's kind of a double-headed sword because you can see there are social media best practices. There's things that Facebook says to do and to not do that will better your business or better your response to your business page or kind of hinder it. But I've very much found within the agricultural industry, that's one industry that Facebook really hasn't taken into consideration as much as maybe kind of the retail clothes or something that is more generic or more widespread to most of the people in the United States. So a little bit of it is trial and error, and then a lot of it is kind of going by textbook.
And that kind of leads into one of the other questions that we have. What are the most common mistakes? What are the most common mistakes that you notice while looking at business profiles on social media?
My top mistake is going to be right here. And again, this is a producer who obviously is doing very well for themselves. They're a close friend of mine, and I'm going to show you another example of the same thing, but they don't have their brand as their profile picture. Another one is, and I love them, and they've been very successful in several aspects of the industry, but here's another one, and they don't have their brand, and they're almost so established that they don't have to, but not all of us are that fortunate to where we can just put up a picture of a black-hided cow and then know exactly what operation it is within the United States. So the biggest mistake or most common hiccup that I see in developing a business page is the fact that people aren't putting their brand, putting the logo that they want associated with their business as the first picture that people are going to see on their timeline.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question before we wrap up. Would you recommend that business owners and producers have multiple social media sites? And if so, which ones do you think are the best?
That is a great question, and something that I fully intended on touching on at the beginning of my session, and I completely let it slide by. What I usually tell clients when they come to me and they don't have a social media platform at all and they're wanting to get on social media is we kind of evaluate their target audience and what platform that audience is most likely going to be on. For the general gist of marketing a product via different forms of visual aids, whether that be photo, videography, or just text content, I strongly encourage people to develop a presence on Facebook first. And very rarely do I say, yes, let's just hit all of them at the same time. That being said, the second one that I recommend is Instagram. And you'll really see once you do a little bit more digging into the demographics. And you almost have to come to somebody who is heavily involved in agriculture to really get a better understanding of this, because when you look at some of the statistics that the people behind these platforms have put together, like I said earlier, very rarely is the agricultural industry highlighted within those statistics. But you have to kind of figure out what the demographics are and who is more likely to be on what platform. Facebook is, I feel like, a bigger melting pot of different age groups and genders, whereas Instagram is primarily younger people, more specifically kind of later high school through new professional development, so like right outside of college. Whereas Facebook, you can have anybody from somebody who's old enough to have an email address to somebody who is old enough to be that person's great grandparent. You really have one spectrum to another. So I always strongly encourage businesses and business owners to develop a strong presence on one before moving to another. And if they do develop that strong presence on one and it's applicable to their business, I strongly encourage moving to Instagram next, just from the standpoint of you can tie those two together. And when you post on one, it'll post on the other for you. So you have less of a, less time is consumed managing one platform.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, well, we had a comment come in. Your photos are beautiful. Thank you for the tips and showing us the multiple views and perspectives. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for the questions. Did you have anything else to close with?
Carrie, if you want to share my contact information, like I said, I know I was very heavy on the cattle industry, and I know that that's not applicable to everybody who might be listening. If anybody has any specific questions and wants to reach out and contact me, please feel free to do so. I'm always happy to help. I know there's a lot of people within my industry in terms of creative professionals who aren't always as anxious to help, just because they feel like there's so many secrets that they're harboring, and if they tell somebody, then maybe their services won't be as useful. But that is most certainly not the case. I love helping people, and I love visiting with people, and that's what was so exciting about doing this, but so heartbreaking at the same time, because there's nothing I would love more than to be face to face with y'all. And I hate that this has to be virtual, but with today's times and the circumstances, that's just how it had to be. So feel free to contact me, email, phone, social media. Don't look into my social media too hard, because I haven't been the best about posting for my business, because I've been so busy worrying about the businesses of my clients. But I would love to further visit more with y'all, and I'm very humbled by the opportunity to visit.
That sounds great. And we will post Taylor's contact information on our website or on the conference site, so you can find that anytime. And we sure appreciate it, Taylor. And with that, we will end our session. And we also look forward to seeing you hopefully at next year's conference in Las Vegas.
Awesome.